Alright, so let me quickly explain the moon transit that is encoded within IPG2. It's actually the main structure or backbone of the short film, but there's just like a lot of other scenes interwoven into it. But if you remove those other scenes, it's pretty clear that this is what it's showing. And that moon transit starts at the point where Lily is in the classroom and she drops the apple, and it ends on the ending scene. Okay, so what that first scene with Lily the Virgin dropping the apple represents is the October 21st new moon in Virgo. Okay, so if you look in Stellarium, you go to October 21st, you'll see there's the new moon in Virgo, okay? And so she's a virgin, so that's what she represents. And the apple represents the moon in this case. And October 21st was both National Honey Day and National Apple Day, okay? So that's why you've got this, she's sitting in this ring of honey and she's holding an apple, okay? So she drops the apple and it rolls across the floor 8 times. So if you watch the video, you'll see it rotates 8 times. And after the 8th time, it bumps into Obama's shoe, okay? And that's right after it rolls over this LC on the ground. And so what this represents, because like I said, the apple represents the moon, is 8 days, right, of the moon moving from Virgo just past Sagittarius into Capricorn, okay? So the apple rolling 8 times, or rotating 8 times, represents the moon moving 8 days. And it rolls right past Sagittarius, and if you look at the bottom of Sagittarius, it's got this LC formed from the constellation lines of Sagittarius and this neighboring minor constellation, Corona Australis, which matches the LC on the ground, right? So that's exactly what you see in Stellarium. Rolls past that LC there and just enters Capricorn. And when it enters Capricorn, here it's a half moon, right? Which is why the apple splits in half, okay? And then after that, it shows a shot of Obama, and he's got this sweat dropping from his forehead. And then if you zoom into the drop of sweat and mirror it, you can see that he's actually looking at the constellation of Pisces, which has the same shape. So that encodes the moon in Pisces. Okay, so then you've got to move forward to November 3rd and November 4th. So that's what that is showing. And then the next part is the camera pans outside and you see a torn US flag fly across the screen. And what that represents is Aries. Because if you look at the constellation artwork of Aries, you'll see that it's got these 13 stripes on its back, just like the 13 stripes of the US flag. And I think this single star represents the star Hamal in Aries, but I'm not sure. So that takes us to November 5th. Okay, so you go from Pisces over to Aries on November 5th. Alright, so the next thing that's shown is the camera zooms out and we see a depiction of the Twin Towers collapsing. And what that is the constellation of Gemini, the twins. So you just have to go forward to November 9th, 11/9, which is why they show Gemini as the Twin Towers, because November 9th is 9/11 backwards. And then the camera starts to back away and you see this little figure here diving into the water, and he's got a light blue suit on and this white mask, and if you look closely, he's got a little star in his chest. So he represents a star, and the star he represents is Regulus in the constellation of Leo, because Regulus is a blue-white star, hence his light blue clothing and white mask. And then if you look in Stellarium, you see that the moon arrives in Regulus pretty much around November 12th, right? November 12th. And from that point, the camera withdraws into a cave through this crevice, and that represents entering the womb of Virgo. So if you move forward from Regulus to about the 15th or the 16th, that's when the moon enters into the womb of Virgo. And it's at that point where we first see the AC figure standing in a canoe, right when we get into the womb here. And actually, much, if not most, of this short film is spent inside the womb. It's just that they weave a lot of other scenes into it. So after the lengthy sequence during which the AC figure is floating through the womb, he emerges from the other side through this female opening on November 17th. So we can see here on November 17th, the moon is emerging from the womb of Virgo. So after he comes out of the womb and floats for a little bit, they show us the final scene of the short film, and this represents the moon in Sagittarius. So let's go forward from November 17th to November 23rd, and that's where you have the moon in Sagittarius. Okay, and Sagittarius looks like a ship if you look at the constellation lines. So like this is the hull, you know, this is the bow, this is the stern, and then you've got this very high center mast. And that's why they show this AC guy standing in this canoe like this, because that resembles the constellation lines of Sagittarius, right? The bow, the stern, and then he himself is the center mast. And another reason we know that this canoe represents Sagittarius is that a little bit earlier in the short film, a bunch of fish jump into the canoe, and the type of fish that jump into the canoe are called archer fish. And Sagittarius is a horse archer. So yeah, that's the end of the moon transit with the moon in Sagittarius. And what this scene is showing us is looking from Sagittarius backwards along the ecliptic to Scorpio and Libra. Okay, so from this position, looking backwards to Scorpio and Libra. Okay, Scorpio is obviously depicted by this big pincer in the sky, and then Libra is the sun aligned with the horizon in such a way to form an omega symbol, right? And the omega symbol is the symbol for Libra. And I think the three pyramids represent the three stars at the end of the constellation of Scorpio, these right here. So yeah, the film seems to be pointing to this date, November 23rd, when the moon is right here in the ship of Sagittarius. And actually, right before that scene, that final scene, they show this shot right here, and you can see the church crumbling right in front of this massive female opening, and what that represents is the birth of the church. And the reason it's shown being destroyed is because after we're gone, the church won't be a hindrance to the Antichrist anymore. And since the Antichrist figure also came out of the womb, what this film is essentially showing is the church and the Antichrist being born at the same time. So yeah, it looks to me like IPG2 is encoding this 33-day transit of the moon from the October 21st new moon in Virgo to the moon in Sagittarius on November 23rd. So now let me end this video by playing an edit of IPG2 that I made that just shows the moon transit and cuts out all of the other scenes that are interwoven into the film.